Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about branching or branches. And what we mean by branches is that until now all the programs we wrote it's just like if you are going to have a certain sequence and that's it, right? In branches, mainly we will have branches in our program. What the meaning of branches? We can name it as a question, right? So for example, like if you come to the class, you will get the grades for the TRED, right? So here now, like the program is having a question, and at a certain point, something is going to change based on this question, right? Like the TRED grade is going to change based on your answer to the question, okay? So control flow or branches or conditionals, mainly it's having some sort of disruption of control flow. So at a certain point you have to stop and ask a certain question, and based on the answer of this question, which in this case like the condition that we have, we actually evaluate the truth value, and based on that we have or execute the right decision. Okay, so this is a very basic example. Like here I'm saying if number of students equals 0, then set lecture equals to 0, which means that there is no lecture. Okay, so this is the first condition, and if you try to analyze what is happening here, you started by having the question, right, which is this condition, right? And from this condition, you are going to execute a certain or change a certain value, right? So here we set lecture equals to 0, which means that there is no lecture. So this is for f. Like if you want to use f, this is actually how to use it. But if there is like two conditions, for example, if we return back here, if the number of students equals 0, then set lecture equals to 1. But what if the number of students not equals to 0? In this case, let's say I will set lecture equals to 1, right? So in this case, I can't use f only. F only is changing one value, right? So if you want to change two values based on your question or the condition, in this case, we will use f else, right? So if the number of students is 0, there's no lecture. Else, there is a lecture, right? So this is the form or how we write the expression for the f else. So starting with f and then here the expression, which mainly is having a certain condition, right? And then after that, the statement, which lists, it can be one statement or more, okay, which finally will evaluate something. And then else will evaluate something different, right? As in the last example, we have set lecture equals to 0, else set lecture equals to 1. So here's an example. So if we can see here, we started by asking the user to enter his name, and we use the scanf to get the user input. And now I want to make sure that the user is not like trying to put any numbers and that's it, right? So this is why actually I have a condition here. If my age greater than 0, okay, so if the user entered the age equals to 1, 2, 3, 50, that's totally fine. So I will just print f, which is this line. Thanks for entering your age, right? But if this user is just trying to play with my program, like, hey, let's put my age like negative 10, and let's see what the program is going to do. And this is why actually you are using the conditionals here. So if the user is playing, in this case, I will tell the user, hey, age must be non-negative. And then I will follow it by exit 0. What's exit 0? This will terminate the program immediately. Like if at any point I want to exit 0, the program will be terminated. And note that to use the exit 0, since this is a function, it is defined inside the header file, which is called standard library.h or using the standard library which is exit 0 defined inside it. Okay, so if you look at this sequence, and let's say the user here entered the age 45. So the program will be executed as follows. We'll go here, we'll check if 45 greater than 0, yes, we'll print this one, we'll skip the else because we already have one condition satisfied, and we'll jump here. So if the age is greater than 0, I will go to the statement of this if condition, right? And skip the else because I'm already having a condition which is satisfied. I will skip the else and jump directly to outside of this conditional statement and go directly to the next statement, which here is just terminating, for example, the main function. Okay, but if we have more than one condition, right? So let's say if the number of students is 0, there is no lecture. If the number of students is less than 10, we will have a recitation. If the number of students is greater than 10, we will have a lecture, for example. Like in this case, we have more than two conditions because as you can see here, if you have two conditions, if, else, and that's it. So if you have more than one condition, in this case, we have to use if and then else if, and then if another condition, else if, another condition, else if, and finally the last condition, we will use just else. So here is an example. Like if direction equals north, and we will see actually a table which giving us all the conditionals and how we can, logical conditions and how we can deal with them. But here it's saying if direction equals north. What the meaning of that? Okay, I will implement that code equals to 0. Like every time my direction is north, I will have a code which is equals to 0. Else if direction equals south. In this case, the code equals to 1. Else if, I'm still having more conditions, right? So else if direction equals west. In this case, the code equals to 2. And then else, code equals to 3. So now you will ask me, why you didn't say else if? Let me write here, direction equals. So why you didn't do that? So my answer here actually is that this is the only remaining condition, right? So you can just say else and that's it. But if you have different conditions, it's better to go with each one, else if, else if, else if. But since you have only one remaining condition, so if it is not north, if it is not south, if it is not west, so it is understandable that the last one will be east, right? If it is not north, south, west, so 100% the last condition will be east. So one thing actually I did, I just put motivating example, okay, on the discussion board. Try to do this by yourself. Like we want to find your grade in this course, okay, the letter grade given the percentage grade. So for example, if I ask the user in my program to enter his percentage grade, for, let's say he got like 97. In this case, your program will print your grade is A, or your letter grade is A, okay? So in this case, actually, this program is going to use everything we had until now. For example, the first thing, using if, right? Why we are going to use an if condition at the beginning, just to make sure that the user is entering the grade between 0 and 100, right? So maybe the user is playing with me and entering -5 as his grade, or 120, which is doesn't make sense except if we have some bonus points and so on, but we are not getting to this exception. So in this case, you will have an if condition just to make sure that he is putting his like grade in this range. And then after that, you will have a series of if else, if else, if else, if else to go with every letter grade. Okay. By the way, if you went there and pasted your code in the discussion board, you will find that my solution, you found it there, and at the same time, you will see others' solutions. If you didn't post anything, you will not see anything. So you have to post in order to see other posts. Okay, so here the conditional statements, mainly like how we play with equality and inequality operators. So, for example, you can say if A less than B, and this is understandable. And if you want if less than or equal, so A less than or equal B, this is how you write it. I want to say something very important here, which is this is if A equals B, right? Compare between this and the following. If A equals B, okay? And it's very important to know that this actually is conditional. So every time it will see A and B, if they are equal, let's say A is 5 and B is 5, if they are equal, it will execute the line after that, right? But here, this is always true. What the meaning of that? Here, this is assignment. So the only thing you are telling here, hey, assign the value of B to A, and that's it. And when the if condition try to go there and look, there is no comparison, so I'm true. That's it. So in this case, you are not going to do any comparison, and your if condition will be always true. Okay? So make sure not to do this at any point. Okay? It will not help at any point. Because since your if condition is always true, why you are using it? Because you will never go to else, right? Because every time you are going to have true condition in the if statement. And if you are using if else, you will never go to any of these conditions. So why even you are using it? So make sure that you are not doing this mistake. Okay, so let's jump now to try some hands-on. So we have here a coding exercise where we want to determine if an input number is even or odd. So in this case, actually, the user will enter whatever number, okay? And your program will start by, let's say, checking if the user number is positive. And then after that, we will try to see how we can get the even or odd thing. So let's start first by trying to organize our thinking in this program. So the main idea here is even and odd, right? So how to know that a number is even or odd? So let's say I have 5, okay, and 17, and 4, and 10. So how to make sure that any of these numbers is even or odd, okay? So if you take mod 2, all these numbers, what mod 2 will do? Mod 2 will actually give you two things, either 0 or 1, right? Because if the number is divisible by 2, it will just give 0. If the number is not divisible by 2, it will give 1, and that's it, right? So, for example, here, this is 1, this is 1, this is 0, this is 0, right? And if you look here, you'll find that, hey, the 1 is corresponding to the odd, and the 0 is corresponding to even, right? And this is very easy. I will go to my program, I will take the user inputs, and then the next statement will be mod 2 of the user input, right? And then the next statement is if the result of the mod 2 is 0, then I will print this number is even. If it is 1, then I will print this number is odd, and that's it. This is the main idea of this program, okay? So let's go now and try to write this program online with each other. So we will start here by having include standard input output, and then let's have int main return 0, and then I will start by just defining a user input variable. So let's have user num, okay, and then now I will ask the user to enter a positive number, and again I'm asking the user to enter a positive number, right? So in this case, printf, please enter a positive number. Okay, since I'm asking the user to enter a positive number, in this case I have to make sure that he already entered the positive number. Okay, so I will scan here %d and then and user num. Okay, and then let's check here that the user is not tracking us, right? Like, this is a very important thing. As a programmer, you have to make sure that your program is not having any flows, is not having anything which will make the user, let's say, track the program, or have an input which is you didn't expect that from the user. I'm always saying it, like, suppose or while you are designing your program, expect that your user is somehow going to do unexpected things, right? As we said here, we are asking the user to enter a positive number, and the user decided, hey, what if I entered a negative number, right? So here I want to check that the number is positive. So what I'm going to do is just check f user num is less than 0. What I have to do now, if I found that the user entered a number which is less than 0, what I have to do? If you remember, we said just exit 0. But if you want to use exit 0, remember that you have to return back here and include the standard library, right? So we will have another include here, and we will have the standard library.h, and this will work. Another thing, actually, if you are having the if statement with only one, or the if condition with only one statement, okay, you can actually skip this, and this will work perfectly. Okay, and we will try it after I'm writing this program. But now, until now, I'm sure that this user entered the positive number. Then my next step is the following. I'm going to check if, or before checking, I'm going to introduce a new variable which will take the output of the mod, right? So I'm going to have the mod of the user number, right? And whatever the output, I will store it in a certain variable, and this variable will be my input to the conditional f, right? So I will start here by int check, okay? And this check will equals to user num, and then mod 2. Okay, so now check is actually 0 or 1. Okay, whatever the number that the user is going to enter, I'm going to have a 0 or 1. So in this case, I can say f, or let's write our comment here. So check if the number is even or odd, and our comment here, use the mod operator to map even, odd to 0, 1, right? And then here, check if the number is even or odd, and our check will be as follows: if check equals 0. In this case, I'm not going to put the curly brackets or the braces, and I will just write directly the line here because I just have one line. Printf, the number is, in this case, it's even, right? If it is 0, it's even. And then I will have another condition, which is if check equals 1, right? But since I have only 2 options, in this case, I can just write else print f the number is odd. And as you can see here, again, I can put the braces here, here, or I can just skip it. So I will take the first case by putting them and the next one by skipping them. But here is the option. If you have more than one statement, so you have to do this. You have to open, brace, and close it again in order to include all of them. But the exception, if you only have one statement in the if condition, you can just write it without opening a curly bracket or closing it. Okay, so this is finally the return or the program, and let's try it. So let's have it here as even odd, and then going here, GCC even odd, even odd. Perfect, we are not having any errors, even odd. And then we want to enter a positive number. Let's try 27. This number is odd. Let's run the program again. Let's have 148, and this number is even, right? And if we return it back to this program, you will find that I have this condition that I need to check and try to find if it is valid or no. So let's run the program again, and let's try to input -5. That's it. Exit 0, you will just go out. And if you want to give the user a certain message, you can just write it here and say printf this is negative number. Program will stop. Okay, so if we save that and try to do the same thing, but we have to compile now again. Okay, I didn't put here semicolon, and then returning back, run it. Okay, I didn't save. Okay, returning back, perfect. And then running and putting again -6 here, and it gave me the message this is a negative number, program will stop, and then that's it, right? So this is how actually we can stop the user from inputting undesired input, right? You are the programmer and you control it. You control what the user actually is going to put there, and if the user didn't put the right thing, you have to say, hey, stop, and enter the right thing. And here, as you can see, we used exit 0 and the program terminated. But when we go to the loops, we will find that I can keep the user in a loop until he entered the right input. Okay, so let's return back to our presentation. And the next thing actually is multiple branches. So as we saw it, but let's see now one example for it. So here, this is the Richter scale, and if you know from the Richter scale, it's somehow like if it's 4.5, there's damage to poorly constructed buildings, right? But if it is 8, most structures will fall, right? So in this case, actually, if you look at this, you'll find that, hey, I have some values, and based on these values, I have to have a program which you will enter the value of the scale, and based on that I will just give you a message to let you know what is the damage that will happen, or based on this number we will know the damage, right? So the best thing actually to represent that is to have a flow chart, and this flow chart will just give you all the conditions, right? And here, as you can see, this is the damage, and based on that I can say it's somehow 6 or 7, right? If it is 8, I'm expecting it will be destroyed. It will be just on the surface of the ground. So here is the flow chart, and if you can see the flow chart, we are starting up here at Richter greater than or equal 8. If it is true, then I will print my statement, which is most structures fall, and then exit the program, right? And then if it is false, so let's see the next condition, which is 7. If it is false, let's see the next condition, which is 6. If it is false, next condition, and so on, okay? Please don't start in the wrong way. So if you started with Richter greater than or equal to 4.5, so this can include 6, can include 7, include 8, right? So always try to start in the right way, where you start with a number. So if it is greater than 8, so nothing else there's no other options. And then if it is not this option, so I'm sure 100% that the user entered a number less than 8, so I will go to the next one, and so on, okay? And this is actually the program. As you can see, we started with 8, and then the print statement, else f, 7, the print statement, and so on until the last one, which is you entered a number which is less than 4.5, and in this case the last statement here is no destruction of buildings, okay? So as you can see, mainly like you want to put like condition and then statement, and in this case our statement is the printf only, okay? There are other statements, as we saw in the other program. You can just try to calculate something or change a value, like set lecture equals to 0, okay? Okay, so jumping from here to the switch case, and the switch case is actually something which is almost the same as f, and then if else, if else, if else. So why we are using both of them? Like why we are not using one and that's it? Because each one is having some advantages. So for example, switch case is somehow having a nice example, which is if you are going to have if else, 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 every time you have to write your variable name, right? You, for example, user number, so you have to say user number is greater than or equal, and then user number greater than or equal, and every time you have to write this. In switch, actually, you are not writing the variable every time. You're just writing it on top, and that's it. Every time you will just have different cases with different values, okay? So this is the main difference here. The second thing, if you remember in f, else, else f, else f, else f, finally we'll have the else, the last else, right? Something similar to it here is called default, which is, I'm saying, okay, here is a case, here is a case, here is a case, and finally, if it is none of these, please consider the default case, okay? This is how we work with it. So here's an example. If you remember, we did the same example with f, and here we have switch direction. So I have the main variable I'm working with. I'm just writing it only one time, okay? And then case n, which is n for north, right? But actually we can't write north here. Why? Because the switch statement is not accepting strings. So it only accepts ends and charge. And this is very important, okay? So while you are dealing with the case, make sure that you are considering ends or chars. Other than that, will not work with you. If you put a string there, it will never work, okay? So here, starting with case n, and then code equals to 0. and then break. Why I'm using break here? Because actually, if you didn't use break, I'm going to execute again the default statement, right? So this is why after each one, because here you are going to go over all of them. If you didn't use break, you are going to go over all of them. If the first one is satisfied, so code will equals to 0. And then, or let's say the first one not satisfied, second not satisfied, third is satisfied. So in this case, code will equals to 2. And then fourth will not satisfy. And then finally, you will go to default code equals to 0, right? In this case, you are going to get the wrong answer. And why? Because you forgot to put the break. So the break here is very important. Make sure that you're including it every time, okay? Okay, and also like the default is an optional thing that you can put it or no, okay? But always I think it's better to put it there. Why? Because sometimes it's not any case of these cases. So in this case, you will not find anything. Your program will not return anything. So the best way actually for it, at least have a default case, and in the default case, you can write that, hey, there is no matching for your number or your direction or whatever, okay? Okay, so there's another thing actually if you want to include two at the same time. So here we have case north, south. So if it is north or south, the code will be 0. And then case west or east, in this case code equals to 1. Okay, so as you can see, you can include more than one case statement in the same execution, which is here code 0 and here code 1. Okay?
Thanks very much for watching the video.